How's it going, E39 Source? Ryan Schultz here with the 2000 E39 M5, and this is kind of the beginning to the biggest project that I've ever done on this car. It's currently March 8th, 2016 in northeastern Ohio. It's a beautiful 73 degrees and the sun's out. That's a rarity. The roads are kind of losing their salt residue. There's still some white salt sticking in the cracks of my street here, but otherwise it isn't bad. So I'm thinking, I last drove this car February the 3rd. It's been almost 5 weeks, and today's the day it's actually going to be coming off this charger permanently. So that's done. I'm going to uncover it, I'm going to back it out, I'm going to get rid of this plastic mat that it's been sitting on for a couple of months now over the winter, and we're going to drive it a little bit. So here's the status update with what's going on. I made an update video last fall talking about how this current engine is the original in this car, February 2000, with 191,930 miles on it at this point in time. And moving to California now in about 7-8 months, I don't want to deal with rebuilding, replacing an engine there, all of the associated work with that. I just don't. It's going to cost 3 times as much. I need this to be a reliable daily driver for the foreseeable future in California anyways. So I'm doing that here. This engine in this car really works beautifully. It makes a ton of power. It sounds okay. It's got some Vanos rattle. There's no signs of imminent failure or really any issues. It does make a considerable amount of carbon out the back, but then again, most of these cars seem to produce carbon to some amount. So I bought an engine, as I mentioned in the previous update video, from a 2002 M5. It had 120,000 miles on it. That engine is in the process of being rebuilt. The block and the heads came back from the shop today. It looks beautiful. They're ready to start putting it together. So within the next week to 2, that engine should be built and ready to be put in this car. This Friday, today's Tuesday, I'm taking this car into the place that's doing it. I'm going to drop it off, and they're going to have it for about 6 weeks. In those 6 weeks, they're going to remove this engine, install the new engine that is being built currently. We're going to replace the clutch, the flywheel, everything. I mean, pretty much anything that you're going to comment and say, hey, you should do this while you're in there, it's being done. The center shaft bearing, I'm putting a different differential. It's a stock differential, one with 48,000 miles on it, with new seals in the car. Shifter rebuild, shifter carrier, it's all being done. It's going to be amazing. It should drive like a new car when it's back. So it's a huge project. All of that is going to take several weeks. I'm hoping it's as close as possible to May 1st. That has been my goal the whole time, even since last fall. I want this car back in the garage and ready to drive all summer on May 1st, depending on what little parts they run into that they have to order and wait on, other projects that coming into the spring months. It's going to be busy for them, I realize that. We could be pushed back a little bit from that date. But if they've got the car on Friday, which I believe is the 10th, it should be possible to switch an engine and differential and all of that within a couple of weeks, I would think, depending on whether projects are pending. So it'll be uncovered. Oh, it looks nice, finally clean. I actually think it would be really cool, seeing that it's 191,930. I think it'd be awesome to drop it off and say that the engine in this car was replaced at exactly 192,000 miles. So if I can manage to drive this thing 70 miles, I don't think I can today. Maybe, I don't know, to see how much time I have. If we can manage to drive at 70 miles, that would be cool, or about 60, and then a couple miles to get in there and have it done about 192. That would be nice. If not, that is also fine. So I'm going to take this cover away, disconnect the battery charger. We'll start it for the first time in about 5 weeks and get it out in the beautiful Ohio sun. I'll talk a little bit about what's gone on with the engine as I disconnect the charger here. So it's pretty much a full rebuild with the exception of piston rings. Now everybody asks, why didn't you do the piston rings? The pistons are out. Well, I have my reasons. Please don't doubt me. The piston rings would have added a large amount of machining to the elusal block, which can't really be done. It's a hard coating to work with, so the piston rings will be original. We did valve seals, obviously rod and main bearings, polished the crankshaft. The Vanos, both the splines and the solenoids were redone from Dr. Vanos, so that should be nice and quiet. Timing chains, timing chain guides, any little piece of rubber, plastic, mounting hardware, bolts, screws, nuts, washers, all of that will be done. So it's going to be about as close to possible as a new engine in this car. I am keeping the original, or the 122,000 mile starter motor, as well as alternator, power steering pump, AC compressor. Should those components go in the future, they're not that terrible to replace, and it just adds a ton of cost now that I'm trying to avoid. So I'm actually, I may leave the connector in case it needs to be plugged in. I guess I'll just leave that in place. It's not in the way, it doesn't hurt anything. So I can't wait, needless to say, to have all this done. It's going to be amazing to drive after, you know, transmission, suspension, differential bushings. Just everything's going to be so fresh and tight. It's going to be fantastic. I'm really hoping this video ends with a successful clip or clips of the new engine running, driving, and working flawlessly in about 6 to 8 weeks from now. So, okay, I gotta find some keys to this pig and get it out of the way. I'm glad to see that the Blackview cameras I installed a couple weeks ago have retained their adhesion on the windshield. Okay, the cover's gone. I just went around and checked all the tire pressure. I had overinflated them to about 51 PSI for winter, just to prevent flat spots on the tires. They were all within 1.5 pounds of 51, so I let the fronts down to 44 and the rears down to 48 per, I don't know if that's what the sticker says or not, that's just what I like to do. So I'm gonna pop the hood before we start it and just check some vitals like oil and power steering fluid and coolant. I don't think this car has leaked much over the winter. Anything that it has would be from valve cover gaskets. I don't think the pan gasket leaks. And honestly, I don't care because all of that's being replaced. That's pretty. Coolant is a hair lower than it usually is. It's usually right happy at that arrow. I'll get a rag for the oil, and the power steering fluid is nice and red and happy. Sweet. Vital signs are strong. Okay, I did drive this car, I don't know, about 30 miles maybe in February. We got a beautiful day and I just decided to go out. And I don't remember, I did fill up with gas after that. I remember posting a picture on the owners group. I'm gonna put the Valentine up where it goes, and we'll see how this thing starts. 191,930. It says it's 53. It's actually about 73 outside. And here we go. Oh, it's happy. It's plenty happy. Sounds good too, actually. Yeah, this is fun. I'm in about 18-20 miles, and I think that Space Gray F10 DCT non-complete leather competition package. I don't know, you tell me. Pre-facelift, maybe. Laser jammers. Yeah, sweet. Okay, I'll consider that a successful 20-some miles, 22 miles, something like that. Been out for about an hour. Around the back of the car, I noticed this when I drove it in February as well. There's seemingly very little carbon output compared to what there was over the summer. I also noticed that the engine totally warmed up today. The oil temperature was even on the warm side of the center dot, and the coolant temperature was exactly at 12 o'clock, which is very rare for this car, no matter how many OEM thermostats I put in it. So I guess that's good news. I'm going to leave it at the end of the driveway for a couple of minutes, clean out the garage, park it in there, and then the next clips you see will be prepping the car to go into the shop for a couple weeks. Garage is ready for the Queen to come home. I'm going to pull it up into the driveway or garage a little bit. We'll get a listen to this engine, because this will likely be the last time you guys ever hear it. Hear the fans coming on up there. It's cooled down a little bit sitting here in the driveway, but otherwise that's pretty damn good compared to where it usually is. This latch is totally sticking in there. That's gonna have to be something that will be addressed. Good evening. It's about 10 o'clock on Thursday night. It's March 10th, and I've spent a good bit of the afternoon and the evening preparing this car to head into Lyric Motorsport to have all of this work done. So why is the plenum off? Well, about a year ago, this time of year, I replaced all the plenum bolts. There are 15, freaking expensive. They're like $10 a piece, shiny chrome pretty bolts that hold the plenum down. I replaced all of them. My old ones were rusty, corroded, not looking good, so I replaced them. It was an investment. Between swapping engines, I don't want those to get lost, so I took them off to put the old ones back on, which I kept in a little plastic bag over there. And while it was off, I decided just to pull the plenum off, and we'll get a look at what things look like. Pretty much exactly how it looked last spring. There's very little oil. I'm noticing that I'm not sure what those are called, but whatever those are should be replaced, and this would certainly be a good time to do them. So I will order those parts and get those done. But I've had to take off the cabin air filter boxes, the ductwork into the firewall, and the plenum. I've also removed a handful of small parts that I just don't want to get lost during an engine swap, which I have put over here. Also some interior pieces. So I've removed the center console. They're going to have to remove that anyways. I would rather it stay here and not risk being damaged, lost, whatever. So that stays here. Rear ducts, rear cup holders, shift knob, center console, which I just replaced last spring with a perfect piece of Titan line. This dipstick, that's only like a year old. There's the 15 plenum bolts. You can see there's some beautiful bolts. I'm also replacing the valve cover covers. They're the engine beauty covers. These arrived today. The new ones, this aluminum metallic finish on the outside is incredibly linear and, excuse my nerd here, really just beautiful. You know, it's brand new. So there's one side, there's the other side. The existing pieces on this car are, to the extent of my knowledge, original at 192,000 miles. The two that came on the engine that's going in this car would have 120 on them, and it's a totally different look. So putting the new pieces on with the new engine will just look that much better. Also removed, obviously, the hardware for the center console, the hazard switch, as well as the lock button are here. These are some parts that were under the hood that could just very easily get lost. You guys may or may not recognize those parts. And then the screws for the center console. So those pieces are safely in my possession here and will stay here until the car returns. I've also taken a little bit of time with a roll of 3M tape just to cover up a couple parts of the car that I don't want tools to hit, mechanics getting in and out. You know, I just don't want to have to replace them or have them be damaged. And covering the rocker here by the jack point is one of those areas that I did on all 4 points. You know, they're swinging those things around. Who knows if the car's up high enough. So easy for me to do to protect this paint down here, which is in incredibly good condition because all 4 rockers on this car have been rebuilt to some extent. So all 4 of those are covered. Moving to the interior, in the front cabin, I covered both door handles. I covered the door trim, the dashboard Titan trim, both finishers, the door handles, and the center console tray. I have also removed the center console, as you can see, and the armrest to reveal the UUC Evo 3, which will be for sale or junked when that goes away because I'm putting a 545i shifter in this car. This piece I had replaced all of this trim. My only concern is that after several weeks this tape would leave some sort of residue, but I've had it adhered to a couple things in my basement for over a week now, and there's been no adhesion left behind by it. So maybe as I stop in periodically to check up on the car and see the progress, I'll peel some of it back, and if it starts to leave any sort of a residue, I'll just remove it or reapply new tape. But that seems to be pretty well protected now. It's not that I don't trust them at all. It's just I'm incredibly anal with this car, and I've replaced all of these parts, and this is expensive trim, and I don't want to come back and find out that somebody got in with a screwdriver in their hand and put a huge slash in the trim, and would then cost a couple $100 to replace the trim. So seems to be pretty well protected. Door handles as well. You guys may remember the DIY on that. I did all that a little over a year ago probably. But I'm going to put, obviously, the plenum back on, and I'm going to put the old bolts back in, and I will probably reassemble the air boxes. Although I wouldn't completely need to. I could just put those parts in the trunk. I'm not sure what I'll do with that yet, but I'll put the stuff back together up here. So, of course, it's got to drive 6 or 7 miles tomorrow to get in there. But this is going to be the final update with the car here at the house. All ready to go into the shop and have a hell of a lot of work done over the upcoming 3 to 6 weeks, depending on what parts they find and need and have to wait on, and other projects that come in, and I'm not their only customer, and I realize that. So that is it. Next time you guys see this car, it'll be up on a rack, probably with many major components taken out of it. I will also say that over the past couple days I've driven this car about 60 some miles. The final miles this engine will see in this vehicle. And our current mileage is at 191,993. The distance from my home to Lyric Motorsport is 6.5 miles. So we're going to have this engine pulled out and all of this work done at exactly 192,000 miles.
When you...
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this is it. We're at 192. We've taken some steps to protect the steering wheel and have a little fun with it per the license plate that's in this car. But that's the last time I shut that engine down. So, alright, 'twas a good run.
Because race car. Because race.
We're going to do a little bit of voiceover here. We're actually back to January 12th, 2016. This is the beginning of the engine disassembly. So this is the 2002 122,000 mile S62. They took better part of a week to take it apart, get the heads off the block, really just strip it down to block and heads. They did leave the camshafts and all of that in the heads. From there, the parts went to a machine shop where they were for, I would say, almost 6 to 8 weeks. It was quite a while. But I filmed a couple of minutes in there during the disassembly process. It was really neat to see this thing opened up. So you can see the plenum on the ground there. I think that was the oil filter housing, the oil rails going across the top of the block. I'm going to be reusing my original 2000 plenum. But we've got the spark plugs in there. Obviously, they will be replaced. I have no idea how many miles are on them. They look pretty well carbonated. I would like to do the pulleys on the front of the engine as well, but the OEM parts are ludicrously expensive. So I may leave them if they squeak or don't work. Then I'll deal with that at a later date. A lot of hoses there. I'm pretty sure every rubber component in this car, in this engine, is going to be replaced. There's just dozens of boxes of parts in the shop. I haven't had a chance to look at everything. Here we can see the timing chain guides and the block with the heads off. The top of the pistons are pretty carbonated, as you can see there. They assured me that's very normal. Everything looked really healthy. There's no scoring on the inside of the cylinders whatsoever. And the block has, at this point in time, been thoroughly cleaned in its entirety. The heads of the top of the pistons have not yet, but will be before the new engine's put in the car. The timing chain guides are the timing chain guides are plastic, and they're kind of noted for being a weak point. And feeling them at 122,000 miles, I didn't feel that I could break them even if I tried to tap them against the concrete floor or something like that. I'm not going to say it's a non-issue, but I don't know that it's as big as everybody says. Now, this is an 02 with only 120 on it, but I'm sure they would have been fine for many more years. There we've got the head gaskets. Of course, they're being replaced. Oil/coolant cooler thing there in the middle. I think that's the oil temp or level sensor. There's the Vanos. Note those tiny little gears on top. Those were remachined from Dr. Vanos, and what they connect to, the Vanos units themselves, were both sent to Dr. Vanos as well. I'll be replacing all the chains and the sprockets. I think that's a timing cover. All of those gaskets will be done. We get into the next clip here. The heads, when they came off, had this very bronze gold kind of tint to them. And after coming back from the machine shop, they really look brand new. It's amazing. We'll see them here in a few minutes. But they're totally silver and they just look brand new. I don't know why they discolor. Maybe as metal heat cycles sitting in oil for over a decade, they turned that color, but whatever. There was no oil down by the spark plug, so that was nice. Camshafts themselves didn't have too much buildup on them from dirty oil, so that's good news. They had this whole part of the shop just set off to me that week as they took everything apart, which is nice. That's also where the engine's going to be built in the upcoming couple days in the same area. So now we're post machine shop. You can see how clean and perfect the heads look now. They unwrapped one of them for me and then covered it back up again, wanting it to stay clean. But completely different color. We have new valve seals in there. They did a valve job, air quotes, and said they recut the valves or something like that. I tried to film in there and get a light. You just can't see it. Before, the exhaust valves were pretty black. They're perfect now, intake and exhaust valves. They just look brand new. So there's the block with no pistons in it, crankshafts out, rod and connecting rod bearings and main bearings will be done. Really neat to see this all apart, though. I mean, they're small. The cylinders aren't that huge, and the block isn't that heavy. You know, it's what, aluminum, so it's pretty lightweight. There's a piston. I'm actually going to end this part 1 of this whole job video here. Tearing apart the old engine, getting it back ready for assembly, and dropping the car off. That's the point where we are right now. It's currently Sunday, March 13th. I'm headed on spring break. I'm going to be in Southern California for almost 2 weeks. When I return here at the end of March, I'll head back in there. I'll see the progress. I'm really hoping to see that the new engine build is complete and ready to be installed in the car. It would be great if steps were already taken then to remove the old engine, have it be out or on the way out. But you guys will be the first to know. So we'll have probably a part 2 video detailing all the work being done. I noticed that I forgot to mention earlier in this video that I am doing the subframe bushings, or having the subframe bushings, rear subframe bushings done as well. But when everything's taken apart, as it's being built / put in the car, I'll definitely get in there with a camera and we'll poke around then too. And then there'll probably be a third part with everything done and a little review of how it feels and sounds and performs and all of that. So thanks for sitting through this one. I hope you guys find it as fascinating as I do to see this engine finally open, really see what makes this thing tick, or hopefully not tick after I get it back, thanks to Dr. Vanos. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys sometime probably during the month of April and let you know how everything's going. Thanks. Take care.